everyone, my name is Holly, and in today's video I'm going to be sharing with you all of the books that I read in January. So January is already over with, and I have to say I had a pretty good reading month. I set my reading goal for 50 books this year, and I was pretty motivated to get a head start. And even more motivated because I knew I was starting an amazing series this month. So last year, January 2016, I started the Mortal Instruments series, and this year I started with the Heroes of Olympus series, starting with The Lost Hero. You guys have no idea how happy I am to be part of this world again. To be at Camp Half-Blood and to be with these characters just filled my heart with joy. Rick Riordan dives right into the story with a new prophecy, new foes are rising, and our beloved Percy Jackson has gone missing. My book boyfriend. Rick Riordan intertwines a new element to the series, and that is Roman mythology. And the way he does it is spectacular. And even though we have a new set of characters, I instantly fell in love with them. I admit, I even got a little teary-eyed for one of these characters because it was so heartbreaking. So I clearly gave this book 5 out of 5 stars. It was brilliant. The next book that I read this month is Return of the Crown by Millie Burns, which was sent to me by the author, so thank you, Millie. So the story begins when a girl named Raven is whisked away from her kingdom with her parents, the king and queen, because there is a rumor that there is a dark sorceress in their midst who is potentially very dangerous. Unfortunately, they do not get very far because once they set sail, it is attacked and the king and queen are encased in this spellbound state. But fortunately, Raven is saved by being encased in this ball of light, and she is shot off away to safety. So now she is stuck on this island 9 years later, and she faces the challenge to save her kingdom. So going into review books like this, I am always a little wary. Now, I have read some amazing review books, but this one was a little bit on the cringy side. Normally when I read a book, I like for the character to struggle and go through hard times to get to their goal, but everything seems to go right for our character Raven. She instantly knows how to handle her new magical powers. Everyone is constantly telling her how pretty and amazing she is, which was pretty annoying. The characters had the personality of a wet sock, and they were pretty dramatic, which is where the cringe got me. And I found the main character, Raven, to be pretty stupid. Wow, I'm ripping on this book pretty bad. Just being honest. No matter how many times the other characters told her not to use her magic or the antagonist would find her, she'd still use her magic. And it would have horrible consequences, and she'd still use it multiple times. I wanted to slap her. And this is a very minor detail, but during the big war that's in this story, everyone keeps taking lunch breaks, which I couldn't help but laugh at. Everyone is dying around you, but you have time to stuff your face with honey cakes. We do get to see a perspective of the evil villain, which were my favorite parts of the story. And if there was a book just of her backstory, I would totally read it. I will say that this book did have an interesting array of characters. There were elves, harpies, unicorns, wolves, and dragons that our characters come across. So the story did keep its pace, and I did read this book in like 2 days, so not bad. And I did enjoy the last 50 pages. The ending was very satisfying, but the negatives were too much for me, and I ended up giving this book 2.5 out of 5 stars. So the next book that I read was The Son of Neptune by Rick Riordan, which is the second book in the Heroes of Olympus series. I can't really talk much about this book since it's the sequel to The Lost Hero, but what I can say is that I loved it. So in this book, we follow 3 different characters, and I'm only going to mention 2 because the third one is a spoiler. The 2 new characters that we follow are Hazel and Frank, and their whole mission is to travel to Alaska to save Thanatos, the god of death. And of course, with every Rick Riordan book, our characters have to face tons of obstacles and even face personal demons. And the Roman mythology is very strong in the story, which I found to be very interesting but also kind of hard to follow sometimes. And I will admit that the beginning of the story was a little slow, but it was totally necessary because this book had a lot of explaining to do after what happened at the end of The Lost Hero. But I ended up giving this book 4.5 out of 5 stars. I loved it. So the next book that I did not read was The Boy from the Woods by Jen Minkman. Yes, this was a DNF, unfortunately, for me. And let me tell you, the insta-love was strong. And our main character, Julia, is one crazy attached girl. So what I got from this book is Julia is at her graduation party, and she spots her high school crush that she has never once talked to. Suddenly, he walks up to her, pulls her up for a dance, and kisses her. What? That doesn't happen in reality. But alright, go on. So Julia has a romantic one-night stand with him, and he suddenly disappears and Julia is livid. A week goes by and she is constantly texting him, and all I'm thinking is, girl, you just got stood up and he don't want you no more. Eventually, we end up seeing a supernatural shift in the story where Michael, the boy that she was in love with, returns after getting a head injury in a strange motorcycle accident and completely acts like a different person. I just personally could not relate to these characters, and I had absolutely no sympathy for them. I did not like the writing, the dialogue was super cheesy, and the book was so slow to get anywhere. I knew this book was affecting me in a very negative way, because as soon as I decided, nope, I'm not reading this anymore, and I slammed this book shut, this huge weight just lifted off my shoulders and I was excited to read again. So I actually did not end up rating this on Goodreads, but personally for me, I give this 1 star out of 5. In my unhaul pile you go. So the next book that I read, and I could not have been more excited to start, was the Mark of Athena, the 3rd book in the Heroes of Olympus series. This book takes place immediately after the Son of Neptune. Their whole quest is to travel to the ancient lands and to find the doors of death. On their way, we get to see our characters forego all kinds of dangerous adventures. We also get to see amazing character and relationship development, since all of the characters that we have met in the previous books are now all together. And we finally get to see my 2 favorite characters of the Percy Jackson series finally reunite. But the reunion is immediately cut short, obviously, when not everything goes according to plan, which is within the first 20 pages. So we are immediately thrust into some intense action. Where the previous books have been fun and action-packed, the Mark of Athena has that and more. And I'll admit, Annabeth stole the show in this one. It was so relieving to finally see what she was thinking and to see the situation through her eyes. And I feel so bad for people who had to wait a year for the next book, because this ending, holy crap, that ending had me feeling some feels. That's really all I can say without spoiling everything, but I will say that I ended up giving this book 5 out of 5 stars. It was amazing. So the next book that I ended up picking up this month was Rewired by Greg Dragon. So the story is set many years into the future and tells of a young man named Brad who is pursuing a career in creating the next generation of robots. After having a bad run-in with a girl he had a major crush on, he tries to right all the wrongs in his life by creating the perfect woman android. He names his new android Trisha, and she is his best creation yet. She can think for herself, she can feel emotions, and she looks identical to a human being. I will say that I really enjoyed the first 50 or 60 pages or so. But after that, it got really hard for me to push through. It's really frustrating to see a story with such good potential in the beginning and then lose it all midway through. It was like reading an endless run-on sentence. And every single male in this book is a pig. And they all call the women right to their faces, "Oh, you're super hot." And don't even get me started on the main character. All he cared about was how a woman should look to be perfect. He was so shallow and vain, and I've never eye-rolled more in my life. I ended up giving this book 2 out of 5 stars, even though I did enjoy a little bit of the beginning, but it was just too much of a drag for me. So another book goes into my unhaul pile. And the final book that I ended up reading this month was the House of Hades, the 4th book in the Heroes of Olympus series. More like House of Heartbreak. This book took me the longest to get through compared to the other books in the series because I felt it to be a little bit slow to get going, but that didn't stop me from loving it. I could tell that this book was really amping up for the finale, and we got to see the underworld in this book, which are my favorite parts. There's something about reading about the underworld and all the details that Rick Riordan was able to put in about the underworld was just so fascinating, and I am absolutely loving this cover. I really don't know what else to say without just spoiling everything because we are starting to get into the end of the series. But I will say that I ended up giving this book 4 out of 5 stars. Like I said, a little bit more on the slower side, but I still really loved it. Alright, so those are all of the books that I read in the month of January. Tell me down below what books you read this month, and until we meet again, happy reading.